The 7th gen was interesting because the Xbox 360 ended up getting lots of JRPGs. I actually bought an Xbox 360 before the other 7th gen consoles because it was getting better JRPGs at the start. In fact, some people say the Xbox 360 has the best JRPG library of 7th gen consoles. Infinite Undiscovery has been described as a rough gem. It has some great things about it, but it's just a bit rough around the edges. Its story can be emotional at times, but its story has problems with its pacing, and some characters are good, others are just there to make up the numbers. Its battle system is great, with the connect system and the way the characters have different fighting styles. There's some clever ideas for dungeon traversal in which you need to use abilities of multiple characters, but the game needed more polish. It has technical issues with its frame rate and, like I said, issues with its storytelling. At number 9, I have Blue Dragon. It was the second JRPG I got for the Xbox 360. Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi was one of the writers for its story. It's very charming, it has turn-based combats, you explore a world map, travel towns, it has the artistic style of Dragon Ball Z artist Akira Toriyama. It's a relaxing and charming JRPG. It's a bit like comfort food. Its story isn't memorable, but it has some beautiful locations to explore. Inside the buildings there's a fair bit of detail. The towns themselves look nice, and you can customize your characters so they can learn a lot of different abilities. I guess you could say a mishmash of different abilities, kind of like in Final Fantasy X. It's a fairly lengthy game as well, being on 3 discs. It was the second 7th gen JRPG I played after Enchanted Arms, and I didn't like Enchanted Arms, so Blue Dragon was there for me when I needed a fun JRPG, especially early on during the 7th gen. At number 8, I have Magna Carta 2. Just like the previous 2 games, Magna Carta 2 is another Xbox 360 exclusive. It was actually developed by mainly a Korean team. It has a fast battle system that feels very fluid, and the overheat overdrive system adds a good amount of strategy. The game has production values, it looks great and it's colourful, and it isn't the first Korean game I've played with very busty women characters. Its story is very generic and forgettable though, but its battle system is very fun and it has nice presentation, and those 2 things make this game worth playing and enjoyable. The Last Remnant was released for Xbox 360 and PC during the 7th gen. It has a good amount of production values, but it had performance issues on the Xbox 360. Nonetheless, the game has great ideas. For battles, it's turn-based, but you control unions, which are groups of between 1 to 5 units that you give commands to. And the strategy plays out more militaristic. Unfortunately, the story for the game isn't that great. You don't really care about the characters, but the game has some great music. At times the music is beautiful and the music during battles is exciting. I actually found the battle system in this game made it addictive because The unions need to have a leader. And like I said, the strategy has a militaristic feel to it. Eternal Sonata came to the Xbox 360 before the PlayStation 3. It's set in a dream of composer Frédéric Chopin, whom is on his deathbed. And yeah, the story is a sad one and it's depressing, but it's meant to be that way because in the game, the other characters are either dying or have big problems. The world is still very beautiful and dreary, and the story is creative and makes you care about it without trying to do too much. The battle system has some great ideas in that it uses real time with phases for attack and defense. And where you stand in the battle area affects what abilities you can do, depending on whether you stand in the light or in the dark. I really cared about the characters in this story. The story is presented in a very delicate way. As you'd imagine, the game has an artistic and a very delicate tone to it. The Xbox 360 was the only 7th gen gaming platform to get a Western release of Tales of Vesperia. It has some of the most beautiful anime-inspired visuals I've ever seen. Its cell shading is simply beautiful. Its story is intriguing because the city is protected by a barrier using some sort of ancient technology that protects the city from being overrun by monsters. One of the main characters is a pink-haired girl who is a noble and she's never been outside the castle before. And another main character is named Yuri and he is blamed for stealing a part needed for the water purifier. And the two of them set out outside of the city, and of course other characters join them on their journey. I won't spoil the story for you. I like how the story doesn't try too hard. It's presented nicely. The battle system is typical Tales, hack and slash with a bit of strategy. This game is like a comfort JRPG for me. I rebought it for Steam and physically for Switch, so I have a way of keep coming back to it because its beautiful anime visuals relax me. If I remember correctly, Nier was originally meant to be an Xbox 360 exclusive. Anyways, it ended up being multi-platform, and it's one of the most emotional and heartbreaking stories you'll ever experience. It's hard to explain why the story is so good without giving away spoilers. I'll just say that much of the world's population has been wiped out by a virus, and then the story takes you over 1,000 years into the future, and the world has gone back to being medieval, and a father is trying to find a cure to his daughter's illness, and many crazy plot twists come into the story. This is a game after all, and he was involved with the story writing for Drakengard and Nier Automata, which have crazy stories. There's a lot of emotion and anger in the story. The characters swear, there's gore, so it's not your typical JRPG. The battle system mixes hack and slash, third-person shooter elements. The characters are great, whether it's the main character Nier himself, and Kane is a female character and she's great in her own way, even though she swears a lot. One of the other characters is a talking book, but he's a fairly likable character, and Emil is a young boy, but he really grows on you, and there's some emotional scenes involving him. The story focuses on things such as sacrifice and despair. The story shows the darker side of humanity, such as parents abandoning their children, people going on a suicidal rampage after they lose the person they loved, and even shows things such as people willing to commit a genocide. The music for the game is amazing. It's sung in a fictional language, but many people, including myself, can listen to the eerie soundtrack for the game. It's not a long game, around, let's say, 15 hours or so, but you can replay through it many times to get different endings. Another JRPG that came to the Xbox 360 a year or two before it came to the PlayStation 3. Star Ocean: The Last Hope is one of my favourite JRPGs of the 7th gen, and it's actually a prequel to the other Star Ocean games. It shows the reasons why humanity had to flee Earth. Some people say it's another generic JRPG, but there's a lot of story when you visit the different planets. The planets have mysteries to uncover, or something that makes them different. Its battle system is great. You need to use a fair bit of strategy against bosses. It's an action RPG, and planets look nice. In fact, anywhere you go, there's bright use of colours in the game. The story has funny moments and a bit of romance. Like I said, it's a prequel to the other Star Ocean games, so if you enjoyed the other Star Ocean games, you should play this game and see the reasons why humanity had to leave Earth and how they got started with colonizing the galaxy. Many male gamers say the female character in this game, Remy, she's very nice looking and they have a bit of a crush on her, or say she's one of their favourite female video game characters. But yeah, it's a JRPG that mixes a bit of a space theme, that you travel to planets with beautiful natural environments, as well as futuristic planets. Overall, I love this game because it's a JRPG through and through. Final Fantasy XIII is one of the most polarizing games ever released. There's some people, such as me, who love it, while there's many people who absolutely hate it. I will say I really like its story. You have the floating city of Cocoon, and the people on Cocoon have never set foot on the surface world. In fact, they're forbidden. Anyone who touches the surface world is quarantined. And it all started because of godlike beings who had a war. And so, anyways, the inhabitants of Cocoon, they live under a very oppressive government. And to make matters worse, the godlike beings sometimes give people tasks to fulfill, even tasks that are seemingly impossible. And if they don't do it, they turn into a monster. And that plays a role in the emotional love story in the game. And I like how the game builds up the suspense for what the surface world is like. I agree when people say the battles against the normal enemies dragged on a little bit and felt choreographed through the paradigm system, but Final Fantasy XIII has some of the most exciting boss battles in the series because the paradigm system really shines during boss battles when you need to switch paradigms quickly, because some of the bosses have powerful attacks that can wipe out your party, and changing to a sentinel and healing quickly are just as important as buffing and chipping away at a boss's health. The game got criticised for being linear, but the inhabitants are living in a confined environment in a floating city, and there's a bit of a spoiler coming, but when the characters go to the surface world of Grand Pulse, you get to roam and explore. Some people say they don't like how Grand Pulse felt too deserted, but the story reasons why it's that way. The population has been wiped out. That's part of the emotion in the story. When you travel around Grand Pulse, there's story clues as to what's happened there. You see city ruins, and the Seath Stones will tell heartbreaking stories of how people were turned into monsters because they didn't fulfill a task given to them by the godlike beings named the Falsi. Some of the monsters on Grand Pulse are huge. They are like giant sauropod dinosaurs. It adds a sense of scale. The story is exciting and emotional. Sure, I'll say Final Fantasy XIII isn't one of the best Final Fantasy games, but I think it's a great JRPG nonetheless. I think people compared it too much to the other Final Fantasy games, and there was so much hype around its release because it was in development for so long. Many people who didn't originally like Final Fantasy XIII now say they like it because they stopped comparing it to the older Final Fantasy games and just accepted Final Fantasy XIII for what it is rather than for what they wanted it to be. And for number one, I have Lost Odyssey. Lost Odyssey is another JRPG from Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi. It's in my top 5 favorite games ever, and some people say to them it's like the real Final Fantasy 13. It was the Final Fantasy game that people wanted to have during the 7th gen. It has some of the most emotional storytelling I've ever experienced, and the reason people say it has a very Final Fantasy feel, it has turn-based combat, and the way you explore towns and the world map does feel like Final Fantasy. Going back to the story, you play as a character named Kame, and some of the other party members, just like Kame, are immortals because they come from another world. And without giving away story spoilers, the result meant that they would have their memories wiped out. So Kame has lived in the world, in the game, for over 1,000 years, and he starts getting his memories back when he visits places and through dreams, and he'll be hit suddenly by some very painful memories, such as a daughter he forgot he had, and things involving her, and he discovers he had a wife. And some of the other memories are very emotional and painful. It's hard to explain why without spoiling them, but one of them involves a crippled little girl whom Kame told her about his adventures. And there's other things, like I said, he has 1,000 years of lost memories to rediscover, and they'll hit you suddenly. Like many JRPGs, this one has romance, and one of the love stories is very sad, and the other one is more heartwarming and lighter. This game, it wasn't loved by critics when it was first released, and same goes for many JRPG fans, because people were saying turn-based strategy was dated. That's not to say the turn-based battle system in this game didn't add anything new. The ring system meant you could do extra damage if you timed the button inputs properly. Your party members could learn abilities from other party members, and immortals could auto-revive in battle after being KO'd, and it happens randomly, so it added extra unpredictability to battles, especially boss battles. You think the battle is lost, but with a bit of luck, things could turn in your favor, or maybe not, because the game was also known for being difficult. Some of the dungeons can be a very tough grind, and some of the bosses are very tough. Even if you do lots of level grinding, it will benefit you much more to use strategy. There's not much more I can say, except, like I said, Lost Odyssey is in my top 5 favourite games of all time, and was like the Final Fantasy game many people wanted during the 7th gen. Now we're seeing Clair Obscur get a lot of recognition for being turn-based with realistic graphics and good emotional storytelling. Lost Odyssey did this back when it was released in the West in 2008, but like I said, people didn't want turn-based back then, but now people love turn-based, and many people now liked Lost Odyssey, even people who didn't like it back in the day. So that wraps up my 10 favourite Xbox 360 JRPGs. In case you're wondering why I don't have Residents of Fate in my top 10, it's just because the 10 other JRPGs I have on this list, I like them more, but Residents of Fate has great things about it as well, and should at least be an honourable mention. Anyways, take care.